Rick Ross's name used to be synonymous with success. When people thought of him, they thought of wealth, luxury, and entrepreneurship. But in 2026, that view is completely changed. Instead of people thinking of W's, they see pettiness, bitterness, fragility, and now brokenness. It got to the point that he went from being one of the most respected rappers in the game to the laughing stock of the industry. But how could this have happened to someone that at one point was the pinnacle of success? To find that out, today we're doing a deep dive into Rick Ross's rise and fall and how it looks like he's going out sad. How did Ross first blow up as a rapper? How did his perception over the years start changing? Why are so many people seeing him as a joke today? Lastly, why would someone as boss-like as him be spending all of his effort crashing out on other rappers in the industry? My name's Poncho, the host of Rap Lore, and we're gonna dive into it right now.
That's my car. That's my car. That's my car. Don't worry, you're gonna get that car someday, Ricky. Bows.
We're gonna take it from the very beginning to try and figure out what went so wrong for Ross. William Leonard Roberts II was born on January 28th of 1976 in Clarksdale, Mississippi. He moved to Carol City, Florida when he was a kid and spent his early years running around the Miami metro area. At the time, Carol City was a place of contrast. Inside the limits, you had harsh neglect and poverty, but if you traveled just a bit south, you had extreme wealth and luxury. Ross grew up on the less wealthy side, which fired him up to better his situation by any means. In high school, he was a star football player and earned a scholarship to play at Albany State University in Georgia. But that didn't last too long. He ended up dropping out and began pursuing rap as a way to get out the struggle. At first, he went by Teflon Don and ran around Florida with his crew, Carol City Cartel. Years later, he got inspired by the Kingpin Freeway Rick Ross's story and rebranded his name to Rick Ross. In 2006, Ross dropped his breakout single, Hustlin', which made a lot of heads turn. His deep voice mixed with the larger-than-life personality he portrayed won fans over right away.
Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling.
He followed that up with this project, Port of Miami, which did crazy numbers for a first album, or any album. It debuted at number 1, moved 187,000 copies first week, and solidified his spot on Def Jam's roster. After that, it was lights out for Ross. He dropped a ton of projects, most notably Teflon Don in 2010, God Forgives, I Don't in 2012, and Mastermind in 2014. He also launched his successful label MMG, where he signed other legends like Meek Mill, French Montana, Wale, and Omarion. Then there's all the entrepreneurial ventures he's been involved in. The list is long, but I'll read off some highlights real fast. He's got a crazy real estate portfolio with several mansions, including a 109-room, 235-acre luxury estate in Georgia. He has partnerships with several alcohol brands, most notably Luck Belaire and Bumbu Rum. He's an investor in JetDoc, a telemedicine company specialized in affordable healthcare. He's an author that released 3 books so far: Hurricanes, The Perfect Day to Boss Up, and Reticence of a Boss. And he owns a bunch of franchise stores, including Checkers Drive-In, Rallies, and at least 25 Wingstop locations in the Southeast US. 25 Wingstops is wild. That is a lot of wings. With all that said, Ross seems like he was a success by every measurable metric we can think of. However, over the years, we kept seeing cracks in Ross's image, and now it's hit the point of no return.
Were you a correctional officer at one point?
I was, yeah.
In Ross's early years, there was a few big controversies around him. Nothing career-shattering, but definitely things that made people give him the side eye. The first one was the origin of his name. Like I mentioned before, it was inspired by the ex-lord turned entrepreneur, Freeway Rick Ross. However, calling it inspired is being a bit generous. A more accurate description was stolen, robbed, and plagiarized. Ross never got permission from Freeway to use his name in his music, mainly because when Ross took the name, Freeway was still in prison. He was sentenced to life in 1996 for his crimes as a drug lord. However, he spent his time locked up learning about law, found a loophole in his case, and got his sentence reduced to 20 years. He then got more time off due to good behavior and was released in 2009. As a free man, Freeway was finally able to do something about the robbery of his name. On June 18th of 2010, he filed a $10 million copyright infringement lawsuit against Rick Ross in Cali federal court. The case went on for 4 years, and in 2014, the courts ruled in favor of the rapper Rick Ross, citing the First Amendment Amendment, the freedom of speech. Despite the win from the courts, it was definitely a loss for Ross's reputation. It made people see him as cosplaying gangster instead of actually being one. And the next controversy would drive that point home even further, the Officer Ricky scandal. This was definitely the most damaging controversy for Ross, and it really didn't have to. He made it 1,000 times worse than it had to be. In 1995 to 1997, Ross worked as a corrections officer in the South Florida Reception Center in Dade County. This lined up right when he left college and was in his early years of rapping with Carol City Cartel. Later on, when Ross dropped Port of Miami, he built his whole image off this luxury kingpin type of rap. Then in 2008, a photo of Ross in his CO uniform leaked online. Ross immediately denied that was him and claimed the photo must have been altered somehow. Right after his denial, The Smoking Gun, a publication that posts legal info, arrest reports, and mugshots, found and posted Ross's CO records. They found his social security number that lined up with his name, salary records, his hiring, and resignation dates. Now, to give credit to Ross, I get why he denied this. Getting caught working as a CO back then is the equivalent of finding out your favorite rapper had an OnlyFans back in 2019. And not like a normal OF, like some real freak. Anyone who follows NFL content probably remembers the sketch situation where he was exposed for doing gay OF content before he blew up as a streamer. Being a CO in the 2000s was at that level of reputation damaging, especially when you build your whole image off being this larger-than-life mob boss. Regardless, after this, Ross couldn't hide it anymore and came clean about his past, leading to the whole industry berating him. At the forefront of this public shaming was 50 Cent, who came out with his diss track Officer Ricky.
Screaming boss, nigga, you ain't a boss. Pussy nigga, you lost. Listen up, it's your boss.
And since then, this has been a permanent stain on Ross's reputation. And the crazy part is, even years later, Ross is still lying about his past. In an interview with Full Send, he admits that he was a CO, but only worked there for 4 months. There is clear paperwork to show he was there for 18. He's still lying. If he just bossed up, which is something he's been telling all of us to do for years, and owned his past, it wouldn't be this much of an issue. But instead, he keeps dodging and dancing around it, which makes people look at him crazy. This is why people like Gilly the Kid called him out for it during their beef in 2022, and Drake on his 2024 diss track Push-Ups.
I might take it latest, girl, and cuff her like I'm Ricky. Can't believe he jumping in his turning 50.
Facts, he is 50. It's crazy and it's all self-inflicted. He just needs to own his past, but for some reason, he just won't do it. Another quick honorable mention for early controversies has to go to his You Won't Even Know It feature. This is pretty straightforward. Ross came out with 2 of the craziest lines I have ever heard in my life.
Put Molly all in her champagne. She ain't even know it. I took her home and I enjoyed that. She ain't even know it.
Stevie Wonder could have seen how bad of an idea putting that out was. Those lines rival some of the worst bars in rap history, like Biggie saying that he would, cannabis on second round KO.
Well, let me tell you something. You might got more cash than me, but you ain't got the skills to eat a nigga's ass like me.
That shit is crazy. This was another thing Gilly hilariously called Ross out for in 2022. It was horrible for Ross's image and bank account. Women's social groups started protesting against Ross and his music, and Reebok severed ties with him right after the song dropped. Damage kind of stopped there though, and he was able to keep winning through that, but that was definitely an ugly stain.
Need your writers back.
I named that one Iceman.
Despite these early controversies, Ross kept things moving positively. He kept partnering with big brands, putting out charting music, and just kept winning across the board. However, everything really started to flip in 2024, right when Ross started beefing with Drake. This Drake beef has a lot of lore, so I'll break it all down. Drake and Ross were cool for years and collaborated on a bunch of big records like Lord Knows, Stay Schemin', Made Men, and Lemon Pepper Freestyle, just to name a few. There's a lot more. They had a big hiccup in 2015 when Drake sparred with Meek Mill, who was MMG's biggest artist at the time. However, they were able to work through that and stayed cool for several more years. But then everything hit the fan in 2024. Basically what happened was Drake started having issues with Future and Metro Boomin. The Metro beef started because of a personal issue Metro had with Drake. He never claimed what the exact problem was, but fans speculate it was due to Drake pressing him for beats while he was grieving the unexpected death of his mom back in 2022. Future inherited the beef from Metro because they were close collaborators, but he also had his own issues with Drake in the past. One example is when he sued Drake for $1.5 million back in 2013. He did this because Drake kicked him off of his tour after he allegedly talked trash about Nothing Was the Same. And to be honest, I'm surprised they ever worked together again after that. But things really went south when Future and Metro dropped their collab album, We Don't Trust You. That project had the song Like That on it, which became the first of many disses towards Drake in 2024. Now re-enter Ross in the picture. Ross aligned himself with Future and Metro at this time, which Drake took as a sign of betrayal. That led to him calling out Ross and everybody else I mentioned on the track before push-ups. Less than 2 days later, Ross responded with his song Champagne Moments, which was less of a diss and more of him just straight shit talking on the mic. For the last 70 seconds, he literally just mag dumps on Drake.
You never wanna be a nigga anyway. That's why you had operation to make your nose smaller than your father nose, nigga.
It's safe to say Drake didn't really want to be friends after that. Now, as we know, Drake would go on to get annihilated by Kendrick, so Ross technically ended up on the winning side here. Despite this, for some reason, Ross just seems obsessed with putting Drake down. Any and every opportunity he has to badmouth him, he takes with a smile. This was shown when Drake mentioned his feelings towards Ross in his recent Iceman song, Make Them Pay.
I was aiding Ross with streams before aiding Ross had ever streamed.
When he heard this, he lost his marbles. Instead of ignoring it, which would have been the smartest thing to do, Ross sat down, did some research, compiled a bunch of negative comments about Drake's project, and read them off to the camera. He then doubled down on his hate while doing a podcast with entrepreneur Patrick Bet-David. He called Iceman horrendous and mocked him for his singing and sounding too sensitive. Then he tripled down on the Joe and Jada podcast. Fat Joe said he didn't understand the tension between them, and Ross replied,
I've always enjoyed giving a spanking if you don't understand what's happening.
And here's the thing, right? No one is saying you can't defend yourself. No one is saying if someone attacks you, you should duck down and take it. At the same time, looking at this Ross situation, it's just like, what are you doing, bro? You already won the Drake situation. There is nothing left to be said. But instead of moving on, he went on a weeks-long tirade mocking Drake and anybody who stood up for him. It doesn't make any sense, and it's definitely not a boss-like thing to do. It's a very bitter and resentful thing to do, and not something you would expect someone so wealthy to be doing. And it's not just me that feels this way. Peep the comments of this chick's smooth reaction video to his attacks. Money can never unlame a lame. This is what happens when you live in these big ass houses by yourself. You start going crazy like Jack in The Shining. Even wrestlers aren't in character this long. This is pathetic. It really makes you think, why would he be lashing out like this? And the answer could be because behind the scenes, everything is quietly spiraling for Ross.
Do the star lady. Do the star lady.
When you peel back the curtains of the big chains, sunglasses, and beard, I guess, you start to see how Ross's whole rich boss image is all a facade. And a few things happened recently that showed what the truth really was. First was the whole airport scandal. Back in 2023, Ross purchased a $25 million private jet, a Gulfstream G550, which he covered with a huge Rick Ross paint job. Despite this, on June 10th, a video went viral of Rick Ross in a commercial airport waiting for his flight like the rest of us mortals. Now, let me start off by saying no matter how much money you earn, there is nothing wrong with being frugal and responsible with your money, especially if someone is just spending to flex on others. What made this such a big deal was the fact that he looked like he was hiding. He had his big shades on, which he usually does, that's not new, but he also was covering his face and his head down in the seat. It looked like he was ashamed to be there. Ross would come out the next day saying he flew commercial because his plane was getting a Wi-Fi Starlink upgrade that cost him $500,000. But even that is like, because one quick Google search of how much Starlink costs in a jet says up to $150,000 for the hardware and another $150,000 for the installation. Another case of Ross overhyping how much he's spending. Anyway, the other thing showing Ross isn't as big as he claims is his struggling ticket sales. This year marks the 20-year anniversary of his Port of Miami album, and he scheduled himself to go on a reunion tour for it. However, the fans aren't exactly as excited for the show as he is. Apparently, sales are so bad that he had to run buy one get one deals on his tickets. Say Cheese broke the news story about this, which Drake saw and liked the post. Very petty and on brand for Drake. Now, in the grand scheme of things, none of this should really matter that much. The issue isn't that he's flying commercial or that sales aren't flowing through the roof. The issue is that he spent his entire career selling us this image of lavish living to the point that he's trapped by it. Another example is this clip of him negotiating with a sneaker vendor for shoes. It's a very rational thing to do, but because it's Ross and all he talks about is money, it just looks bad when he does it.
If I could take 22, I'd take 22.
He'll cash out you the other 3 in a week.
He's a prisoner of his own image. It's actually kind of sad when you think about it, because he can never live a normal life or do normal things because of how hard he pushed this facade onto us. And he knows this too. He tried to play it off as a joke, like when he posted this troll video of him hoping he doesn't get seen at Costco and AutoZone. But it's really not a joke. He really f***ed himself over, and in my opinion, that stress is probably what's causing him to crash out so much.
You know, cease and desist ain't never been nothing.
There's a couple big takeaways from Ross's career that I think everybody watching can learn from. Certain mistakes that he made that we should avoid at all costs. First, do not build your career off of a lie. Own your past and don't run from it. The consequences of Ross lying about his CO past outweighed any possible problems people would have given him. He made the problem a million times worse. Second, be cautious about how you brand and present yourself. Ross has spent so long forcing this rich mafia boss image down everyone's throats to the point that it's a prison for him. Bro cannot make a financial responsible decision without getting flamed by the whole world. If something happens and his money really dries up, he is going to be shamed to death. Third and lastly, sometimes you just gotta chill, bro. You don't always need to one-up someone. You don't always need to prove something. Sometimes the pursuit of getting the last word in comes at the expense of your whole reputation. With all that said, that's why Rick Ross is going out sad. Let me know what you think about how Ross has been moving lately, and if you want to learn more about rappers crashing out, I have a full breakdown on why everybody has turned their back on Offset. Check it out here.